The story of William Spedding and the New South Wales Court of Appeal upholding the decision to award him a large amount of compensation is a story that every Australian should know. Let's go through it from start to finish because it's got so many twists and turns, but it's fascinating and it really gives you an insight into how if the wrong people want to prosecute you and persecute you, they can and do make your life hell. Let's begin with who William Spedding is. It begins with a tragedy, which is the disappearance of a young boy by the name of William Tyrrell. There was a police inspector at the time by the name of Gary Jubelin who believed that William Spedding was involved in this disappearance. He was a tradesperson and the inspector thought it was him, despite the fact he had an ironclad alibi, including receipts that showed that when the disappearance happened, somewhere else getting coffee. And so, in a concocted story, the inspector accused him of sex offenses and labeled him a P-word. They did this because they believed it would put pressure on him to give information about the disappearance of William Tyrrell, which he had nothing to do with. So, they charged him, they arrested him. They kept him in custody for 8 weeks until he got to go to the Supreme Court because at the local court he was denied bail. They lied on the police fact sheet and they continued a prosecution and persecution of this man with a view of getting information that he couldn't give because he wasn't involved. This guy's life was completely destroyed. People thought he was a monster. He took it to trial. He won. Of course he won. There was never going to be any other outcome. And he sued the state saying, this is disgusting. And keep in mind, throughout this entire period, no disclosure was made to his defense team that this was the reason this prosecution was going ahead. And the Supreme Court Justice Harrison, who saw this, said it is probably the worst example of a malicious prosecution he's ever seen. And thankfully, there aren't many comparisons like it. The police decided to appeal this, and the Court of Appeal agreed with Justice Harrison, saying this was heavy-handed, it was inappropriate, and it was disgusting. There is nothing worse than being considered the P-word in a society. There have been people killed because they thought someone was a P-word. This guy was labeled publicly, humiliated, shamed. His livelihood was destroyed because some inspector thought it was appropriate to do so to get access to information that he could never give. This is why we have to watch the watchers. And the sad part is, do you know where this money comes from? Taxpayers. Taxpayers like you and me have to fund behavior like this because that's where the funds come from. It doesn't come out of that personal individual's pocket. Go figure, huh? Follow me for more legal TikTok. The tragedy of what happened to William Spedding, his prosecution by police, and what is now some glimmer of justice for him is a story that every Australian should know. And it's horrible what happened to this man. The story begins with the disappearance of a young boy by the name of William Tyrrell. The police at the time, including one particular inspector, get it in their head that William Spedding is the man to search. He's a key suspect. But William Spedding actually has an alibi, and he's got even receipts that show that he couldn't possibly have been the one to abduct William Tyrrell. Notwithstanding this, they concoct a strategy, a false strategy, where they're going to put pressure on William Spedding to reveal what he knows, or what they believe he knows about William Tyrrell. They accuse him of being a P-word. That's right, someone who's interested in children in the most reprehensible way. They concoct these charges, they charge him, they lie on the police fact sheet, making up information that has no basis in reality. They oppose bail, and this poor guy goes to jail for 8 weeks while he has to wait for Supreme Court bail, because you get one shot in the local court and one shot at the Supremo. Thankfully, he gets out after 8 weeks, but 8 weeks is a long time to be in jail, and be in jail for that. Notwithstanding that, they continue to prosecute him. And it's only after he successfully beats these charges that he brings an action against the police. The whole way through the prosecution, they don't disclose to his legal team that this is the reason that they're using this bizarre strategy. And so this poor man has his entire life turned upside down because they continue to allege, and publicly so, that he's this disgusting man who does these horrible things. And so his life begins to unravel. Of course it would. His livelihood goes. His friends and family abandon him. His whole life is thrown off course because they believe he's involved in something that he's not. Ultimately, and thankfully, he sues the state. And in a decision by a justice of the Supreme Court, they say that this is one of the most egregious, if not the most egregious example of police maliciously prosecuting someone, and they've awarded him one of the highest compensation payouts ever, which still, given what he went through, is not that much. It's a million plus, under $2 million. Now, the police decided to appeal this to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court have said, we agree with the first decision. We say that this is heavy-handed, inappropriate, and disgusting. This is why it's critical to watch the watches, because situations like this can and do happen. Just because you're a police officer doesn't mean you're omniscient. You can form a view that's completely not based in reality and use it to target and destroy someone's life. And as for where this money is coming from, correct, the taxpayer, you and me, we are paying for this mistake. It doesn't come out of the personal pocket of that inspector or their team. And let me be frank, there is nothing worse in this world to be considered one of those people, a P, especially if you're innocent. Imagine what this man went through. Follow me for more.